Did you have a good garden this year? Did you have problems in your garden this year? We had problems in our garden this year. Holly, what was some of the problems that we're facing and have faced?
We got all the weeds, but a lot of people have all the weeds, so I guess we're not alone, but we had a lot of weeds is one thing. You spent a lot of the spring pulling weeds out, purging the garden of the weeds and the weed roots and the weediness, and unfortunately, there's a lot of weeds. And actually,
and if I knew now what I know, in life, if you know now if you would have knew then what you know now, we all would have made better decisions in certain aspects. And I wouldn't have spent all that time. I wouldn't have spent about 2 weeks weeding the garden. I would have put effort into other things.
But the thing is that I was reading about this, and everybody has had more weeds, and the ragweed, which is also weed, and that's what causes fall allergies, is very high too. There was a lot of growth of ragweed, so we're all being doomed by the weeds this year.
So what are we going to do before we get into what our social media and listeners are going to do here?
We're going to build some raised beds.
Going to invest some time and some money and bring in good compost and create a quarter of the size of the garden in which we currently have. And we are projecting, based on our experience, that will produce 4 to 5 times more than what our current garden is making. Our current garden is 1,800 square feet. We're going to create raised beds that will create 272 square feet. And based on the good soil and everything else that's going along with it, we should have 4 times more production than what we were having before that. So a couple of things that our social media people, we asked this on Facebook, and we got some feedback here.
Right. So the first one is the MKE Veg Garden. They said, my peppers and eggplants produced, but they could have produced more if sown indoors 2 to 3 weeks earlier. Next week, I will seed them Next year, I will seed them around Valentine's Day instead of March 6th.
So it's not a terrible problem, but a couple of dates back there. And that's the thing with the eggplants and the peppers. They're very slow growers, and that's why you want to start them 10 to 12 weeks before your last average frost date in your area. And I always say if the plants are a little bigger inside than what you were wanting, that's a good thing. It's when they're very small and piddly inside and you're trying to move them outside and getting them transitioned, it's a very much more difficult shock to do such.
So, and then we go to Emma here, and she said, total failure, 2 years counting, Brussels sprouts. This year I even tried 4 different times techniques. I had an early spring plant sown indoors in March that blew its sprouts, maybe not stomped in tight enough. I had 2 plants I direct seeded mid-June that were eaten by some critter. And the 4th one is actually still growing just fine, but was started mid-July, leaving me with hope for production unless I fashion some type of cloche for it, which is like a covering. How will I fix this next year? Well, I'll try not to go into with the I'm going to fail anyway attitude. Plants much prefer positive thoughts. Thank you, Emma. So sometimes when you maybe she should keep trying if she wants to, but sometimes you just have to let it go.
Yeah, and now Brussels sprouts, if you plant them too early in the spring and it gets cold and then it gets warm and then it gets cold again, it can mess with the plants. And brassicas are like this, where it will mess with the cycle because it thinks it went from cold to warm, summertime, and then back to cold again, and then it goes ahead and produces the harvest. So keep that in mind. And also with the Brussels sprouts, it may be a variety too. Some varieties are more tolerable to the more northern climates. Some are a little more tolerable of the warmer areas. But see what you can look up there. So.
Okay, and Sherry's been following us for quite some time, and she said, I can't seem to grow broccoli or brassicas for the life of me. I have clay soil, weeds went wild, too much rain for the west of Oshkosh, trying to start small garlic farm this October, my 3rd year with garlic, but my 1st year to grow to sell. Congratulations, Sherry. Trying to become food safety and organic certified help. So it sounds like she's having some problems with broccoli and brassica.
Well, we can't help you on broccoli or cauliflower because we can't grow that either. Brassicas, on the other hand, brassicas are also Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, kale, cabbages. Those do very well. The technique in which many successful gardeners and farmers who grow those crops they want a very loose tilt soil, but also they want their roots to be packed in extremely tight, kind of backwards. But you want to get your soil nice and loose, and then when you plant the start, press in the soil around the roots extremely extremely tight in order for the root and the plant to feel secure in the planting area.
So Sandra said that where should I start? My peas were a complete failure this year. I will rotate but put my pea fence in a new spot and use some fertilizer. My beets were a huge failure this year as well. Next year I'll remember to alternate Epsom salt and fertilizer as I did in the past and mulch. I burned much of my peppers by adding too much chicken manure when I transplanted them. Instead this fall I fertilizer so it has the winter to break down. The garden is, so she's in Dousman, which is just west of us a little bit.
In Wisconsin.
Yep, in Wisconsin. So
chicken manure will burn the plants, as she found out. Now, manure is not a bad thing. However, you want your manure, whatever the source is, to be aged so the plants do not get burnt. The burning procedure occurs because the manure has a high concentration of nitrogen that will destroy the root system on these plants. So that's why we have to let it age. Beets and other root crops, you want good loose soil. We have found carrots, beets to only be able to successfully to be grown in our garden in raised beds or pop-up raised beds or grow bags. And
the peas, we had not a good time with peas either. We had that really wet spring.
2 years ago, we had phenomenal peas, 5 foot tall, couldn't keep up with them. And then this year, we had difficulty as well with the peas.
So I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about that if your peas did not do well. We had a very wet spring.
You do want to trellis peas no matter what you do because they have very soft stems. And they need structure in order to grow vertically. And if they do not have that structure, they will fall over, crimp the stem, and the plant will die at a very young, immature age. So that's a thing that you want to keep in mind there.
Okay, so Julia said that she lives in coastal Georgia. She had a hard time with Roma tomatoes this season. Roma tomatoes do like coastal temperatures.
San Marento.
But I would, if you're trying to grow something like a paste tomato, like a San Marzano, Roma,
San Marzano, yes,
or an Amish paste, I would go with the Amish paste. We seem to have the best success with that. In our home, we live close to Lake Michigan, and we get really good success at our smaller garden, our home garden. We get really good success with those Amish paste tomatoes, but when the big garden that's more inland, we do not.
The garden that's inland is about, 5 miles, 6 miles off the coast of Lake Michigan?
The big garden is about 8 miles.
8 miles. Mm-hmm. So the difference between a half mile off the coast of Lake Michigan versus 6 miles.
We're about, our house is about half mile.
Half mile, right. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to give a outline here. It shows the difference in the climates and between the two gardens in the summertime. And for those of you who live next to a large body of water, there's a difference of 10 degrees.
Oh, yeah, especially I can feel it because I work more west, and I can feel it when I come east home from work. Sometimes there's a 10-degree difference, especially in fall and spring. So, yeah, so those are some of the failures and I guess maybe not so good things. But I think the biggest thing is that this year we all fought weeds, and we also all fought that, especially in the Midwest, we had a very, very, very wet spring, and that was going to be problematic no matter. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.